Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. Have you ever watched a child on a monitor and felt your chest tighten for no reason? Like something was wrong, but you couldn't put your finger on it? That's how it started for me. The first night I babysat the twins. My name is Lila Brooks, and I was 21 at the time, living in a small town in Oregon. I'd taken babysitting jobs before, but this was supposed to be easy money. A quiet family, twins under 2, and a pay rate high enough to make me overlook the creepy vibe I sometimes got from the neighborhood. The house was large, 2 stories with dark wooden floors, cream-colored walls, and a kitchen that gleamed under the new LED lights. There were 2 babies, Emily and Owen, identical except for the faint mole on Emily's left cheek. Their parents, Heather and Paul, left around 7 that evening for a dinner party. They gave me strict instructions: bedtime at 8, monitor in the living room, call if anything happens. Everything felt normal at first. Emily and Owen played on the rug, the sound of blocks clacking and soft baby giggles filling the room. I poured myself a cup of tea and settled into the couch with the monitor on my lap. That's when I noticed it. Owen was supposed to be sitting beside Emily, but the screen showed him crawling toward the staircase, an impossible feat since the baby gate was locked and the staircase was too tall for him. My heart sank into my stomach as I set the monitor down and walked into the hallway. The staircase was empty. I called his name. Nothing. I told myself it was nothing. The angle of the monitor, a trick of the light, maybe I'd misread it. I shook my head and went back to the living room. A few minutes later, Emily started fussing. I grabbed her from the rug and carried her upstairs to her crib. That's when I noticed Owen again, on the monitor, sitting at the kitchen table, banging a spoon against a plate. I froze, my hands trembling, my pulse in my ears. The kitchen was behind me. I spun around. Empty. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of a creak from the hallway made me freeze. Every nerve screamed that I was not imagining this. I checked the monitor repeatedly over the next hour. Each time Owen vanished from one place and appeared somewhere else impossible. On the porch, peeking into the laundry room, sitting on the top step of the staircase that he couldn't possibly climb. By 9 I was shaking. I called Heather, the mother, but her phone went straight to voicemail. My eyes never left the monitor. Then, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. Owen's movements weren't like a baby's. They were deliberate, careful, almost too precise. And sometimes he looked older, slightly taller. The first night ended with me sleeping lightly on the couch, the monitor on, Emily in her crib beside me, Owen nowhere to be found. Over the next week, it got worse. He would appear in places that were locked. He would stand silently in the doorway behind me when I was doing chores. Sometimes he would reach toward me, and I could feel a cold air in the room, as if someone had walked through the wall. I told Heather everything during the day, but she laughed nervously. "Owen is a curious one," she said. "You're imagining things. Babies can move fast." I started noticing patterns. Owen only appeared on the monitor when I was alone with him. Emily never did this. I began comparing photos I had taken on my phone. Pictures from the morning showed Owen in the crib, but when I glanced at the monitor, he was across the room, sitting on the counter, staring at me. One night, around midnight, I heard soft crying upstairs. I grabbed Emily and went to check. The bedroom was empty. The crib was undisturbed. The sound seemed to come from the nursery monitor. I checked the screen, and there he was, Owen, sitting upright, looking directly at me, tears streaming down his face, though no sound came from the room. I backed away slowly, tripping over the rug, heart racing. My pulse was deafening. The screen flickered and the image changed. Suddenly, it wasn't Owen anymore. It was a girl about my age, sitting in the corner of the room, staring at the monitor with hollow eyes. I screamed and the image vanished. My hands shook as I grabbed the monitor and threw it onto the couch. The next day, I went to the library, digging through old newspapers. I found a story about a babysitter who had vanished 5 years ago while watching these same twins. Her name was Megan. She had never been found. The police never solved it. That evening, when I arrived at the house, the gate was open. My stomach dropped. I locked it behind me and checked every room. Emily was asleep in her crib. Owen was nowhere. I glanced at the monitor. On the screen, Megan was sitting on the rug, rocking Owen gently, smiling at me. I wanted to run, but my legs were frozen. The monitor flickered, and suddenly Megan was gone. Owen was back in his crib, eyes wide, staring at me like nothing had happened. I called the parents. Heather answered this time. She sounded strained, almost whispering. "Lila, the twins are special. You have to understand." "I don't understand." "Megan disappeared in this house. I've seen her. She's here." "Not here. It's an echo. She's part of the house now. You just watch the twins." I didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every shadow, felt like Megan was watching me. The monitor flickered. I saw her reflection in the living room window, smiling, eyes empty. I screamed, but no one came. Over the next month, I tried to leave, but every time I stepped outside, the street seemed to stretch unnaturally. Trees shifted positions. Houses I had passed a dozen times before appeared in new arrangements. I felt like I was in a labyrinth, with Megan watching from every corner. The twins seemed oblivious. Emily would laugh, crawl toward me. Owen would sit quietly, occasionally glancing at empty spaces. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was listening, watching, communicating with Megan somehow. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard a knock at the door. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I looked through the peephole. No one. But the sound continued. Soft, deliberate. A second later, the monitor flickered on. Megan was standing in the living room, hands folded, eyes locked on me. I grabbed Emily, ran for the door, fumbling with the lock. It wouldn't budge. Behind me, the monitor showed Megan closer now, her head tilting unnaturally. A smile stretched across her face. I kicked the door. It swung open. I didn't look back as I ran to my car, dragging Emily, pulling Owen from the crib, even though he wasn't awake. My hands trembling, sweat dripping, I drove away as fast as I could. The police found the house empty the next day. No Megan, no twins. Only the monitor, still flickering with static. Heather and Paul claimed they had gone to visit family. I never believed them. I never babysat again. I quit the job, moved cities, changed my phone number. But sometimes late at night, I still see her on screens. A reflection in the window, a movement in the corner, an echo of a girl who wasn't there. Even after escaping, even with the safety of friends and the police behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the monitor. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I tell you this because if you ever babysit someone else's children, and you notice something off, listen to your instincts. Sometimes the danger isn't alive in the way you think. Sometimes it's an echo, and sometimes it's been waiting for you all along. People like that don't need a reason. They just need an opportunity. And in that house, Megan had found hers. Now every time I see a baby monitor, my hands shake. Every reflection feels like a shadow of what I escaped. And every soft giggle, every silent corner, I wonder if I'm seeing Owen or her. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing it could happen again. Story 2. Have you ever watched a child on a monitor and felt your chest tighten for no reason? Like something was wrong, but you couldn't put your finger on it? That's how it started for me. The first night I babysat the twins. My name is Lila Brooks, and I was 21 at the time, living in a small town in Oregon. I'd taken babysitting jobs before, but this was supposed to be easy money. A quiet family, twins under 2, and a pay rate high enough to make me overlook the creepy vibe I sometimes got from the neighborhood. The house was large, 2 stories with dark wooden floors, cream-colored walls, and a kitchen that gleamed under the new LED lights. There were 2 babies, Emily and Owen, identical except for the faint mole on Emily's left cheek. Their parents, Heather and Paul, left around 7 that evening for a dinner party. They gave me strict instructions: bedtime at 8, monitor in the living room, call if anything happens. Everything felt normal at first. Emily and Owen played on the rug, the sound of blocks clacking and soft baby giggles filling the room. I poured myself a cup of tea and settled into the couch with the monitor on my lap. That's when I noticed it. Owen was supposed to be sitting beside Emily, but the screen showed him crawling toward the staircase, an impossible feat since the baby gate was locked and the staircase was too tall for him. My heart sank into my stomach as I set the monitor down and walked into the hallway. The staircase was empty. I called his name. Nothing. I told myself it was nothing. The angle of the monitor, a trick of the light, maybe I'd misread it. I shook my head and went back to the living room. A few minutes later, Emily started fussing. I grabbed her from the rug and carried her upstairs to her crib. That's when I noticed Owen again, on the monitor, sitting at the kitchen table, banging a spoon against a plate. I froze, my hands trembling, my pulse in my ears. The kitchen was behind me. I spun around. Empty. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of a creak from the hallway made me freeze. Every nerve screamed that I was not imagining this. I checked the monitor repeatedly over the next hour. Each time Owen vanished from one place and appeared somewhere else impossible. On the porch, peeking into the laundry room, sitting on the top step of the staircase that he couldn't possibly climb. By 9, I was shaking. I called Heather, the mother, but her phone went straight to voicemail. My eyes never left the monitor. Then, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. Owen's movements weren't like a baby's. They were deliberate, careful, almost too precise. And sometimes he looked older, slightly taller. The first night ended with me sleeping lightly on the couch, the monitor on, Emily in her crib beside me, Owen nowhere to be found. Over the next week, it got worse. He would appear in places that were locked. He would stand silently in the doorway behind me when I was doing chores. Sometimes he would reach toward me, and I could feel a cold air in the room, as if someone had walked through the wall. I told Heather everything during the day, but she laughed nervously. "Owen is a curious one," she said. "You're imagining things. Babies can move fast." I started noticing patterns. Owen only appeared on the monitor when I was alone with him. Emily never did this. I began comparing photos I had taken on my phone. Pictures from the morning showed Owen in the crib, but when I glanced at the monitor, he was across the room, sitting on the counter, staring at me. One night, around midnight, I heard soft crying upstairs. I grabbed Emily and went to check. The bedroom was empty. The crib was undisturbed. The sound seemed to come from the nursery monitor. I checked the screen, and there he was, Owen, sitting upright, looking directly at me, tears streaming down his face, though no sound came from the room. I backed away slowly, tripping over the rug, heart racing. My pulse was deafening. The screen flickered, and the image changed. Suddenly, it wasn't Owen anymore. It was a girl about my age, sitting in the corner of the room, staring at the monitor with hollow eyes. I screamed, and the image vanished. My hands shook as I grabbed the monitor and threw it onto the couch. The next day, I went to the library, digging through old newspapers. I found a story about a babysitter who had vanished 5 years ago while watching these same twins. Her name was Megan. She had never been found. The police never solved it. That evening, when I arrived at the house, the gate was open. My stomach dropped. I locked it behind me and checked every room. Emily was asleep in her crib. Owen was nowhere. I glanced at the monitor. On the screen, Megan was sitting on the rug, rocking Owen gently, smiling at me. I wanted to run, but my legs were frozen. The monitor flickered, and suddenly Megan was gone. Owen was back in his crib, eyes wide, staring at me like nothing had happened. I called the parents. Heather answered this time. She sounded strained, almost whispering. "Lila, the twins are special. You have to understand." "I don't understand. Megan disappeared in this house. I've seen her. She's here." "Not here. It's an echo. She's part of the house now. You just watch the twins." I didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every shadow felt like Megan was watching me. The monitor flickered. I saw her reflection in the living room window, smiling, eyes empty. I screamed, but no one came. Over the next month, I tried to leave, but every time I stepped outside, the street seemed to stretch unnaturally. Trees shifted positions. Houses I had passed a dozen times before appeared in new arrangements. I felt like I was in a labyrinth, with Megan watching from every corner. The twins seemed oblivious. Emily would laugh, crawl toward me. Owen would sit quietly, occasionally glancing at empty spaces. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was listening, watching, communicating with Megan somehow. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard a knock at the door. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I looked through the peephole. No one. But the sound continued. Soft, deliberate. A second later, the monitor flickered on. Megan was standing in the living room, hands folded, eyes locked on me. I grabbed Emily, ran for the door, fumbling with the lock. It wouldn't budge. Behind me, the monitor showed Megan closer now, her head tilting unnaturally, a smile stretched across her face. I kicked the door. It swung open. I didn't look back as I ran to my car, dragging Emily, pulling Owen from the crib, even though he wasn't awake. My hands trembling, sweat dripping, I drove away as fast as I could. The police found the house empty the next day. No Megan, no twins. Only the monitor, still flickering with static. Heather and Paul claimed they had gone to visit family. I never believed them. I never babysat again. I quit the job, moved cities, changed my phone number. But sometimes late at night, I still see her on screens. A reflection in the window, a movement in the corner, an echo of a girl who wasn't there. Even after escaping, even with the safety of friends and the police behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the monitor. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I tell you this because if you ever babysit someone else's children, and you notice something off, listen to your instincts. Sometimes the danger isn't alive in the way you think. Sometimes it's an echo, and sometimes it's been waiting for you all along. People like that don't need a reason. They just need an opportunity. And in that house, Megan had found hers. Now every time I see a baby monitor, my hands shake. Every reflection feels like a shadow of what I escaped. And every soft giggle, every silent corner, I wonder if I'm seeing Owen or her. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing it could happen again. Story 3. Have you ever been somewhere so quiet that it feels like the walls themselves are listening? That was how I felt the first time I babysat for the Miller twins. My name's Claire, I was 22, and I was living in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Westfield, New Jersey. Babysitting was just a way to make extra money while I finished my degree. I'd done plenty of jobs like this before, some normal, some a little weird, but nothing prepared me for that night. It started like any other babysitting job. Laura Miller, the mother, left around 6, smiling, telling me she'd be back by 10. "Don't worry, Claire. They're usually pretty good," she said. "Just feed them, help them with homework, and keep them from running off." The house was big, 2 stories with a long hallway connecting the bedrooms. It smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. I unpacked my bag in the living room, glanced at the clock, and decided to start homework help in the dining area while the twins played with their toys. I noticed something first when I went to check on them around 7:30. The hallway was darker than it should have been for that time of day, shadows stretching unnaturally along the walls. I shrugged it off. Maybe it was just the angle of the lights. "Look, Claire," said Ethan, the older twin, holding up a toy soldier. "He says hello." I smiled. "Oh, that's nice." But then I saw it, movement. A dark shape, flickering against the wall near the staircase. I froze. "What's that?" I asked, pointing. "Who?" Ethan said. "The shadow," I whispered, heart racing. "Oh, that's just Mr. Wiggles," he said, laughing. "He's our friend." I laughed nervously. "You mean the shadow?" Ethan nodded solemnly. "He's very friendly." I told myself it was nothing. Kids have wild imaginations. Shadows can play tricks on the eyes, especially in a hallway like this. But then it happened again. Around 8, I was in the kitchen making them sandwiches when I heard whispering from the hallway. The twins were giggling, talking to someone, or something I couldn't see. "Shoo," I said, approaching. "Who are you talking to?" "Friends." Lily, the younger one, said brightly. "They're helping us play hide and seek." I tried to make it sound normal. "Okay, just be careful." I told myself it was harmless. Just kids pretending. Then the shadows started moving on their own. I could see them flicker past doorways, against walls, always just at the edge of my vision. At first, I assumed it was a trick of the light, but then I noticed the twins would answer them, nod, even laugh in ways that made my skin crawl. Around 9, I went to check the bedrooms. The hallway was empty, at least no one was there, but the shadows lingered. They moved independently of the twins now, stretching and retreating along the walls. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I tried to ignore it. I fed them read stories, got them into pajamas. But the shadows didn't stop. They were patient, always present, almost watching. By 9:30, I was sitting on the couch, trying to distract myself with my phone, when Ethan came running. Claire, he said. "They want to play a game with us." "Who?" I asked, heart thudding. "The friends," he said, pointing to the hallway. The shadows were there, tall, formless, stretching down the hall. My stomach sank. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. Not until the parents came home. I tried to keep calm, keep the twins distracted. But the shadows followed them into their rooms, curling around their beds like dark smoke. At 10, Laura Miller walked in. She smiled, said hello, and I wanted to tell her everything, but my voice caught in my throat. How could I explain shadows that moved on their own, that whispered and laughed with children who weren't alone? I tried to act normal. "Hey, they were good," I said. She glanced at the twins' bedrooms. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes, they flickered just a little. "I see you met our friends," she said softly. "What friends?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "The ones who watch over the children," she said, her tone light but firm. "They help them when we're not around. They're very protective." I forced a laugh. "Oh sure, shadows, right?" Laura didn't laugh. She just nodded. "They are part of the family now. You'll get used to it." I wanted to protest, but the sight of the shadows in the hallway, tall, sinuous, and somehow aware, froze my words. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone with them, and I had no way out. After that night, I never stayed until the parents returned again. But the memories haunted me. I'd see a flicker in my apartment when the lights dimmed. I'd hear whispers when the house was empty. The idea that children could actually be speaking to or becoming shadows stayed with me. Years later, I still think about it. Sometimes I catch myself glancing at the corners of rooms, at the edges of dark hallways, wondering if something is watching, waiting. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. Even now, when I babysit for friends, I check the shadows. I don't know why, but I can't stop. Maybe it's because that night taught me something I'll never forget. Shadows aren't always empty. Sometimes they're more real than the people who cast them. If you ever find yourself watching shadows move at the edges of your vision, remember what I learned. Don't assume they're harmless. Sometimes, the quietest shapes carry the most terrible truths. And sometimes, the children who laugh with them aren't just playing. They're becoming part of the shadows themselves. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the lights and normal life behind me, a small, cold part of me can't stop replaying the faces of those twins, smiling into the dark, calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I still see them sometimes, just at the edge of the hall, waiting, watching. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing it could happen again. People like that, those shadows, don't need a reason. They just need a chance. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. Story 4. Have you ever babysat somewhere and felt like the walls themselves were watching you? That's exactly how I felt the first night I walked into the Greystone house. My name is Emily, and I was 19 at the time. I had just started college and took a weekend babysitting job to earn a little extra money. The family that hired me, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, lived in a quiet suburb I didn't know well. Big house, picket fence, all the usual trappings of safety. Their daughter, Lily, was 2 years old, shy, and sleeping upstairs in her nursery. The Carters were out for the evening, attending some gala, and they left me with strict instructions. Feed Lily, read her a story, make sure she stayed in bed, and check the baby monitor every 15 minutes. I nodded, a little nervous, but mostly excited to have a quiet night. It was when I unpacked the babysitting kit that I saw it. A vintage baby monitor, old as something out of a 1970s horror movie. Cream-colored plastic, one antenna bent at a strange angle, a single red light blinking. I laughed to myself. Classic, I muttered. They must like retro stuff. I set it up in the living room, tucked it into a corner, and went about my routine. Dinner, small chores, making sure the house was tidy. At first, the monitor was silent. Normal. Then around 9:30 I heard it. A faint cry through the monitor. High-pitched, urgent, but not Lily's. I froze, listening. It sounded like a child, but the tone was wrong, older, deeper somehow, layered with a trembling undertone. I whispered, "Lily," and heard only silence. I told myself it was nothing. Old electronics, pick-up interference. Maybe a neighbor's baby. I tried to focus on tidying the kitchen. But then came the lullaby. Low, melodic, and in a language I didn't recognize. Words that sounded like syllables strung together to form a song, but not English, not anything I knew. I froze, my hands gripping the counter. I told myself, asterisk, it's a recording. Someone left a tape on the monitor. That's it, asterisk. I checked the monitor, fiddled with the knobs, even unplugged it for a few minutes. The cries returned the second I turned it back on, accompanied by the same soft, eerie lullaby. I decided to ignore it, reasoning that the house was old and the monitor probably malfunctioned. But every 15 minutes when I checked, the sounds grew louder, clearer. Sometimes I thought I could hear more than one voice, overlapping cries and songs, whispering to each other. Around 11, curiosity got the better of me. I crept up to Lily's room. She slept peacefully, her small chest rising and falling. I leaned close, listening to her breathing. Nothing unusual. The cries were coming from the monitor. That's when I noticed it, a small vent at the corner of the nursery near the floor. It was partially hidden by the rug. The sound was louder now, concentrated there, almost like it was coming from behind the wall. I laughed nervously, whispering to myself, probably just the furnace, yeah, that's it. But the monitor pulsed with the cries and lullaby, insistent, almost as if it were calling me. I spent the next hour pacing, trying to distract myself. When I checked my phone, I noticed something odd, a message from an unknown number. Check the walls. My heart slammed in my chest. I had no idea who would text me, and the message didn't feel like a prank. Something about it was deliberate. I went to the vent and pressed my ear against it. The cries stopped instantly, replaced by silence. Then the lullaby returned, softer this time, almost coaxing me. I backed away. My pulse raced, my hands trembling. I told myself I was overreacting. I was tired, alone in a strange house, listening to old electronics. But then I heard footsteps upstairs. Soft, deliberate pacing. Not Lily's, not the Carters. I climbed the stairs slowly, every nerve screaming. The nursery door was closed. I approached it and heard a faint whisper, indistinct but human. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze. Every nerve screamed that I was not imagining this. I swung the door open. Nothing. Lily slept soundly. The room smelled faintly of baby powder. But the vent, I couldn't stop staring at it. I found a screwdriver in the drawer and pried it open. Behind it was a narrow shaft, dark, dusty, and impossibly deep. The cries were coming from inside. I could feel the vibration in the floorboards, the thrum of something alive, moving, waiting. Suddenly, a hand clamped over my mouth. I gasped, twisting, breaking free. I stumbled back, heart racing, and dropped the monitor. It hit the floor with a sharp crack, and the cries stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Silence. Then the monitor lit up again, red blinking, and the lullaby resumed, softer, almost apologetic, but unmistakable. I grabbed my coat and ran to the door. But as I reached the living room, I noticed something on the floor. A small, folded piece of paper, written in the same language as the lullaby. I picked it up with shaking hands. The words didn't make sense, but the message felt clear. Asterisk, they are watching. They are waiting, asterisk. I bolted outside and didn't stop running until the streetlights were behind me. I called the Carters. No answer. I texted. No reply. The next day, I tried to go back. The house was locked, vacant. For weeks, I tried to find any trace of the family, the baby monitor, anything, but no one remembered a babysitter coming by. The house sat empty, like it had never been lived in. It took me months to stop dreaming about the monitor, the cries, the voices behind the wall. But even now, years later, I can't hear a baby cry without checking the room, the vents, the shadows. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what you see. It's what you hear, and what you know is still listening. Even today, when I close my eyes, I can hear that lullaby, soft and coaxing, in a language I don't know. And I remember every babysitter who came before me, trapped somewhere behind the walls, waiting. If your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. And trust me, you don't want to hear the old baby monitor turn on at night. It might be calling your name. Story 5. I never thought a babysitting job could make you question your own reflection. But that night, I learned how fragile ordinary really is. My name is Emily. I was 19, living in a quiet suburb of Cincinnati, working weekends at a local cafe to save for college. Babysitting was just something extra money-wise, and I'd done it dozens of times before. Usually uneventful, sometimes annoying, but never terrifying. It was a Friday evening when Mrs. Langley called. She had 2 kids, Max, age 6, and Lila, age 8. The parents were heading out to some gala downtown, and the kids were used to me, at least in theory. The house looked normal. Brick exterior, 2-car garage, a wide hallway with polished wooden floors. You'd think nothing could go wrong. I arrived around 6:30, the sun already dipping behind tall maples, casting long shadows across the living room. I put down my bag, greeted the kids, and took a mental note of the usual. Lila's favorite blanket on the couch, Max's scattered toys in the corner, and the TV remote perched dangerously close to the edge of the coffee table. I made a casual joke about it, and Lila giggled, sweet normal. At first, everything was fine. Dinner was simple, peanut butter sandwiches and carrot sticks. The kids ate while I tidied up, flipping between kitchen and living room. The first little oddity happened when I walked past the hallway mirror on my way to the bathroom. I froze. My reflection didn't move with me. Not entirely. It lagged, just a fraction, but enough to make my stomach twist. I blinked. I leaned closer. My reflection was there, smiling, but I wasn't smiling yet. I shook my head and laughed nervously. Probably tired, I muttered to myself. I told myself it was a trick of the light, the angle, the shadow creeping from the lamp behind me. I checked again. This time my reflection tilted its head, mimicking me, but slightly off, slower, like it was thinking. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Babysitting alone, long week, nerves. I shrugged it off, carried the plates to the sink, and tried to focus on Max arguing with Lila over a toy. Hours passed. The kids went upstairs for baths and pajamas. I was supposed to be relaxing in the living room until bedtime, but the feeling from the mirror never left. Every reflective surface in the house, mirrors, windows, even the shiny brass handles on doors, made me uneasy. I swear I started noticing things. The reflection in the bathroom mirror lingered a moment too long after I had turned away. The reflection of myself in the hallway window looked like it watched me, even when I wasn't looking at it directly. Every time I glanced, it had a slightly different expression, one that made my chest tighten. By 9 o'clock, the kids were in bed. I checked on them through the monitor, then tiptoed back to the kitchen to pour myself some water. That's when it became undeniable. I passed the hallway mirror again. My reflection was standing still, but I hadn't stopped. It mimicked me, yes, but deliberately slower, more careful. Its eyes were darker than mine. Its smile wrong. I whispered to myself, I'm imagining this. Just tired. I kept walking. It kept smiling. I told myself it was ridiculous. Mirrors can't move on their own. People can't move in mirrors. I told myself all of this, but my heart refused to calm. I locked the kitchen door out of habit. I didn't know why. Then came the first sound. A soft, deliberate footstep from the upstairs hallway. Not a creak in the floor. Not a groan from the pipes. Someone or something was walking toward the stairs slowly, intentionally. I froze, water glass halfway to my lips. Max? Lila? I called softly. No answer. I tiptoed toward the staircase. Halfway up, I saw it, my reflection, coming down the stairs. Not in the mirror. Not on a window. It was behind me. My own body, same clothes, same hair, but its movements were smoother, eerier, deliberate. It grinned at me, and my stomach dropped. I bolted into the bathroom, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands shook as I dialed 911. I whispered frantically into the phone, explaining what was happening, trying to sound sane. The operator's voice was calm, too calm. Stay on the line. Is there anyone else in the house? Yes. I cried. There's someone like me, moving like me, watching me. There was a long silence. Emily, the operator said slowly, stay calm. Can you get to the front door? I looked in the bathroom mirror. My reflection was still there, grinning. And now it was leaning forward, pressing a hand against the glass from the other side. Not matching my movements. Its eyes glinted with something almost human, almost alive. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I remembered my training from babysitting. Stay calm, make noise, keep the kids safe. But there were no kids awake. Only the reflection. Only the mirror. Only me. I backed up against the wall, my phone clutched like a lifeline. It's okay. Just go away. Just leave, I muttered. The mirror rippled slightly like water. My reflection raised its hand, and it waved at me. I screamed. Then the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. The monitor upstairs flickered. Max and Lila's night lights blinked out. My reflection was gone. I ran into the hall, groping the walls, trying to find a light switch. My breath came in sharp, desperate bursts. That's when I saw movement at the top of the stairs again. Slowly, deliberately descending. I stumbled back into the living room, grabbed a lamp, and held it high. My reflection was there, sitting calmly on the couch now. Same clothes, same hair, smiling, watching me. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I ran for the door. My reflection followed, not mirrored. Behind me, matching me, I fumbled with the doorknob. It clicked. I yanked it open and ran down the driveway. The street was empty, quiet, the usual suburban calm. I didn't look back. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, my panicked call had been patched through. The house was empty. The parents had returned early for some reason. They had no idea anything had happened. Must have been a prank or your imagination, the officer said. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him I had seen myself moving independently, grinning at me, but the words caught in my throat. I was shaking too badly. I never babysat again. Not there. Not anywhere. Months later, I moved into my first college apartment. It was small, but it had mirrors. I thought I was safe, until the night I was alone, studying, and glanced into the bathroom mirror. My reflection blinked before I did. It smiled. I never looked into a mirror alone after that. I never closed my bedroom door completely. I slept with lights on. I still carry my keys in my hand, every night, just in case. Sometimes, when I'm walking past windows in the city, I swear I see myself, not quite matching my movements, just behind me, smiling. Even after escaping, even with the safety of normal, everyday life, a small, cold part of me can't stop replaying that face, the calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. If you ever babysit somewhere new, keep your eyes open. But more than that, keep your mind open. Because sometimes the reflection in the mirror isn't just you. And sometimes it's waiting. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. I know now, I was lucky. Most aren't. Story 6. Have you ever been in a room with a child and felt like they knew something they shouldn't? Something that made your skin crawl and your stomach tighten in a way you couldn't explain? That's how my first night babysitting went, and I've never forgotten it. My name is Jenna Hayes. I was 22 at the time, and I lived in a quiet suburb in Oregon. I had babysat plenty of kids before, usually toddlers, sometimes teens, but the Clark twins were different. They were 7-year-olds, Lucy and Sam. Identical in looks, but completely opposite in personality. Lucy was quiet and observant, while Sam was loud, curious, and full of mischief. Their parents, Sarah and Daniel Clark, left around 6:30 for a dinner party, and their instructions were simple. Bedtime at 8, check the monitor every half hour, call if anything felt off. I unpacked my bag, placed it on the hall table, and tried to relax. The house smelled faintly of vanilla and pine, and the hum of the refrigerator filled the kitchen like a quiet companion. It started with Lucy. We were sitting on the living room floor, Sam building a tower with blocks and Lucy drawing in her notebook. She looked up suddenly and said, "Aunt Jenna, the lamp will fall on you tonight." I froze, halfway through pouring juice into Sam's cup. "Excuse me?" I said. "The lamp," she repeated, her little brow furrowed. "The lamp will fall on you. At 9. I blinked. "Okay, thanks for the warning." I laughed softly, trying to shake it off. I told myself it was nothing, just a weird guess, a fluke. The lamp above the couch was securely fastened. I didn't think more about it. At 9, I was sitting with Sam in the playroom when a loud crash echoed from the living room. My heart sank into my stomach as I ran out, and the lamp had not moved an inch. Sam was laughing, thinking it was part of his game. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of my own breath in the quiet hallway made me freeze. Something about Lucy's words had planted a seed I couldn't ignore. By the second night, it got worse. Lucy began telling me things I couldn't explain. The fan will spin too fast tonight. The stair gate will open by itself. The water in the bathtub will rise. I asked her how she knew, and she just stared at me with those sharp, unnerving eyes and said, "I see it before it happens. You have to listen." I told Sarah about it when she called during her commute. She chuckled nervously. "Lucy has a vivid imagination. Don't take it too seriously." But the house had other plans. That night, the ceiling fan over the dining table began to wobble violently. I rushed to hold it steady. The stair gate was ajar, though I had locked it, and in the bathroom, I could swear the water in the tub sloshed as if someone had turned on the tap. I froze, my pulse in my ears, hands trembling. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. I started noticing small things in Lucy's behavior. She would whisper things about previous babysitters. Megan fell down the stairs last year. Claire dropped the pan. Every detail was exact. Every name and accident real. I tried to ignore it, but my gut told me something was off. Too off. One night, around midnight, I woke to a sound from upstairs, a whispering, low, urgent. I grabbed the baby monitor from the hall table. On the screen, Lucy was standing in Sam's room, alone, pointing toward the hall. But when I ran upstairs, the room was empty. I checked the monitor again. The image flickered, and there she was, not Lucy. A young woman, pale, eyes wide and hollow, sitting on the floor with the twins around her. My breath caught. It was Megan, the babysitter who had vanished in the house 5 years ago. I screamed, and the image vanished. My hands shook as I grabbed the monitor, fumbling to shut it off. The twins were still asleep in their beds, unaware. The next few nights were a blur. Lucy continued her warnings, now explicitly about me. The pantry will trap you. The stairs will bite your foot. Don't go to the kitchen after 10. I didn't know whether to laugh or panic. The parents kept insisting it was imagination, but my heart sank every time I heard a creak, every time the monitor flickered. I realized these warnings weren't just about accidents, they were instructions. By the fifth night, I knew I couldn't stay. The sense of being watched, of the house itself breathing and shifting, had become unbearable. But leaving wasn't simple. Every time I stepped outside, the shadows in the yard seemed to twist toward me. Every hallway felt longer, narrower, alive. Then came the turning point. I was in the kitchen, trying to grab a glass of water, when I felt it, a presence behind me. I turned slowly, and there she was on the monitor, Megan hovering, her expression calm, empty, and terrifying. The twins were next to her, silent, eyes blank. I grabbed Emily, my neighbor's daughter was actually with me for safety, and ran for the front door. My hands trembling, I fumbled with the lock. Every second felt like a lifetime. Behind me, the monitor showed Megan stepping closer, her head tilting unnaturally, a cruel smile across her face. I kicked the door open. My heart racing, I ran to the car, dragging the twins with me. My mind screamed. I didn't look back. Even after calling the police, they couldn't explain it. The house was empty when they arrived. The monitor still flickered though, showing only static and sometimes, for a brief second, the calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I never babysat again. I moved cities, changed my number, and avoided anything that could remind me of that house. Even now, when I see a child staring too intently, or a baby monitor flicker, I feel the cold tightening in my chest. People like that don't need a reason. They just need an opportunity. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing it could happen again. And in that house, I realized I was next. Story 7. Have you ever walked into a house and immediately felt that the walls themselves were watching you? I wish I could tell you it was just my imagination, but I know now that some houses, they're alive in a way that doesn't feel alive at all. My name is Emily. I was 20, living in a quiet suburb of Boston, trying to save money for college. Babysitting seemed harmless. I'd done it before, usually for neighbors or family friends. But this one job, it changed everything. It was a Friday evening when I arrived at the Grayson house. The driveway was long, winding, lined with perfectly trimmed hedges. The house itself was enormous, pale gray stone with tall windows and a porch that seemed to stretch endlessly. I remembered thinking how calm everything was, too calm, and my stomach had that small flutter of unease you get when something doesn't match the picture in your mind. Mr. and Mrs. Grayson greeted me warmly, perfectly polite, with smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. "Emily, thank you for coming," Mrs. Grayson said. "The children are upstairs, getting ready for bed. You'll have the run of the house until we return around 11. I nodded and followed them inside. The living room smelled faintly of polished wood and something floral, almost cloying. The walls were lined with expensive-looking art, muted colors and geometric shapes that felt wrong, like they were designed to draw your eyes, but only just enough to distract you from the corners. The parents led me upstairs, pointing out the bedrooms. "Ella's room is the second door on the left," Mr. Grayson said. "Oliver's is at the end of the hall." They paused at the top of the stairs, smiles unwavering, and said, "Dinner's in the fridge. Help yourself if you get hungry." I nodded, trying to seem calm, but my pulse had already quickened. I started with Ella. Her room was perfectly tidy, pastel colors, a mobile spinning slowly above the crib. I sat on the edge of her bed and checked the closet, the drawers, the little bookshelf lined with toys. Everything seemed normal. That's when I noticed it. The door to the hallway was not where it had been. I could have sworn I'd passed it on the left when I came in. Now it was on the right, just a few feet away, slightly ajar. I froze. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I blinked. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I had misremembered. I stepped out into the hall. The layout was different. The stairs that should have led down to the living room ended at a blank wall. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, doors where there hadn't been any. I told myself it was nothing. Old houses settle. Maybe renovations had created odd angles. but my gut told me something was very wrong. I went to Oliver's room. Same as before. Toys neatly arranged, bed made, the boy asleep. But again, the hallway changed. I walked back to check the stairs, and they were gone. Completely gone. Where the banister should have been, there was a smooth wall. I started to panic, trying each door, each hallway, retracing my steps. Every time I thought I knew the layout, it shifted. Doors appeared and disappeared. A hallway that led to the kitchen one moment ended in a blank wall the next. I ran back to Ella's room, and the door slammed behind me. The mobile spun faster, casting strange shadows on the walls. Then I heard it, soft giggles, tiny footsteps running in the hall outside, whispering my name. Emily, Emily. I tried to open the door. Locked. No key, no latch, nothing. I pounded, screamed, my voice echoing in the room. The giggles stopped for a moment, then came again, closer, more deliberate. I pulled at the curtains to see the hall, but the window only showed the night outside. No one there, and yet I could feel them moving, shifting with the walls. I ran to the next door, thinking maybe the parents had a master key. I tried Oliver's room. Same thing. Doors gone, walls shifting, the furniture subtly rearranged, as if the house itself had grown impatient with me. I grabbed my phone. No signal. The Wi-Fi was off. My texts to the Graysons went unanswered. I started to cry. My hands were trembling as I fumbled for anything to hold on to, anything that would make the house feel stable. But the floors shifted beneath me. The walls expanded. Doors led to nowhere. I realized then what the house was doing. It was feeding on me, on my fear. Every heartbeat, every shallow breath, every whimper became part of the rhythm that made the house alive. I tried to calm myself, walked slowly, listening. The whispers continued. Emily, Emily. They were soft, coaxing, teasing. Sometimes they sounded like Oliver, sometimes like Ella, sometimes just a shadow of a voice I didn't recognize. I remember stopping at a wall that hadn't been there before. A panel slid open, revealing a small, dark room. I saw shadows moving inside, furniture shifting subtly, as if the room itself was breathing. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Hours passed, or what felt like hours. The layout never stayed the same. I kept circling the same rooms, doors appearing and disappearing, stairs leading to nowhere. I finally understood that the house didn't just move. It anticipated. It learned. It fed on anyone who watched the children, anyone who tried to keep them safe. At one point, I stumbled across the kitchen. I thought I recognized it from my walkthrough earlier. The fridge opened to reveal nothing, just an empty void. I could hear the giggles again, all around me now, echoing in every direction. I remember trying to hide in a closet. The door closed behind me, but the space inside expanded, long and twisting, impossibly deep. I could hear my own breathing, amplified, each inhale and exhale a note in the house's symphony. Eventually, I realized I had to escape, not through doors or stairs, but through the fear itself. I started shouting, screaming, letting the house hear me, let it consume my panic. The walls throbbed, the floors rippled, and then, somehow, the front door appeared. I bolted, out into the night. The driveway stretched impossibly long, the hedges growing taller with every step. I could hear the house shifting behind me, whispering my name. I didn't look back. I ran until the street lights of the neighborhood swallowed me, until the normal, mundane world returned. I called the police the next morning. They found the house empty, no children, no signs of the Graysons. Nothing but a perfectly maintained mansion, silent and unremarkable. Nothing to explain the whispers, the shifting walls, the fear. I never babysat again. I moved apartments, changed jobs. But even years later, when I hear faint giggles in the night, or a door creak in a building that should be silent, I remember the Grayson house. I remember the rooms that changed, the stairs that led nowhere, and the knowledge that some houses are alive in ways you cannot comprehend. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see those walls moving, doors appearing where they shouldn't, shadows just beyond my sight. And I remember the lesson I learned too late. Fear is a hunger, and and some houses, some things feed on it. If your gut tells you a place is wrong, leave. Don't question it. Don't stay to figure it out. Some rooms aren't meant to be entered, and some houses, they never forget a visitor. Story 8. Have you ever had that feeling, the one that prickles at the back of your neck when something is just off? That's exactly how I felt the first night I babysat for the Harpers. My name's Rachel. I was 21 at the time, living in a sleepy little suburb in upstate New York, and I thought babysitting twins would be simple. A few hours, some snacks, maybe a bedtime story, then home before it got too late. Simple, safe, boring. It started normally. I arrived at their house around 6 in the evening. The parents were cheerful, hurriedly explaining routines and bedtime rules. The twins are used to someone being around at night, Mrs. Harper said, laughing. But they get scared easily. Don't mind the shadows. Sometimes they like to play with them. I smiled politely, assuming she meant the usual tricks of dim lighting or a child's imagination. The house was the typical suburban sort. 2 stories, neatly trimmed hedges, and windows that reflected the fading sunset in a comforting amber glow. I unpacked my bag in the living room, noticed the twins' toys scattered across the floor, and settled into the couch with my phone while they played. Then I saw him. At first, I thought it was a reflection. A man standing in the yard across from the living room window. Just outside, motionless, as if he had been there for hours. I froze. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me. Well, the sliding glass door's reflection in the window, and I realized I could feel someone's presence without a sound. "Rachel," said little Emma, the younger twin, tugging my sleeve. "Uncle Ben says hello." I blinked. "Uncle who?" She giggled. "Uncle Ben. He's waiting outside. He wants to see our new drawing." I forced a smile. "Oh, that's nice. Do you want to see him?" Emma asked, eyes wide and eager. I hesitated. Something about him was wrong. He didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor, maybe someone waiting for their own kids. I tried to laugh it off, but the whisper of leaves brushing the windows sounded more like soft footsteps. Every nerve screamed that I was not imagining this. Throughout dinner, the twins kept referencing Uncle Ben, pointing toward the windows as if he were part of the conversation. I caught glimpses of the figure from every angle. Pale face, black coat, silent, watching. And always outside, always in shadow. I decided to check the front and back doors. Locked. I even stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, trying to get a better look, but the man simply vanished from view. Not gone completely, just hidden, like the house itself swallowed him. I told myself it was a trick of the light. Reflection, tree shadows, anything rational. I reminded myself, these are children. They imagine friends in empty rooms all the time. The night dragged on, and with each hour, I noticed more oddities. Soft knocks against the windows when no one was outside. Faint whispers down empty hallways. The twins talking to the air, as if responding to someone I couldn't see. At 10:30, I started the bedtime routine. The twins' rooms were at the end of a long hallway, and as I guided them to their beds, I saw him again. Standing in the shadows near the stairs, silent, still. Emma waved. Ethan waved back. "Good night, Uncle Ben," he said. I swallowed hard, trying to force casualness into my voice. "Good night, Ben. I guess." The shadows in the hallway seemed to lean closer, stretching unnaturally, yet somehow coordinated with the children's movements. My pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled to turn off lights and make the room as cozy as possible. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. After leaving the twins' rooms, I sat on the couch in the living room, pretending to check my phone. The figure appeared outside again. Pale face, blank eyes. He didn't move, but the twins seemed to respond to him. I realized then that these children weren't talking to him. They were him, or at least something of him intertwined with their presence. I wanted to leave. I wanted to call their parents, but my phone died. Of course. That's when I heard the whisper, soft, almost sighing, from the hallway. "Rachel." I froze. My eyes darted toward the stairs. There was no one, but the air felt heavy, like someone had stepped close enough to breathe on me. My heart thudded painfully. I bolted to the front door and tried the handle. Locked. Windows locked. I could hear soft giggles from the twins' rooms. They were awake, whispering to someone unseen, waving at the shadows that I now understood weren't just in the yard. They were part of the house, part of them. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze. Every nerve screamed that I was not imagining this. Around midnight, I heard the front door creak. Not opening fully, just moving. I looked toward the window. The figure stood there, so close now, almost touching the glass. He raised a hand slowly. The children waved. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know if it was fear or disbelief. I considered leaving through the garage, but the door wouldn't budge. The figure remained there, calm, patient, silent. Watching. Then the whispers became voices. Quiet, almost tender, like the children were singing lullabies. Ethan's and Emma's voices blended with it, and suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a man outside. This was something ancient in the house, reaching out, weaving itself into the lives of these children to remain tethered to this place. I crouched behind the couch, shaking. I wanted to call the police, but I was terrified they wouldn't believe me. What would I even say? There's a ghost child at the window, merging with the twins? Minutes, or maybe hours passed. I don't remember. I only remember the figure stepping back slowly, retreating to the shadows at the edge of the yard, and the giggles fading with him. The house returned to ordinary quiet. When the parents came home, I tried to tell them. There's a man outside, I said, trembling. Mrs. Harper smiled. Oh, you mean Ben? Don't worry. He's just watching out for them. I felt my face go pale. Watching what? They've always had visitors, she said softly. Ben was their uncle a long time ago, but he's not really here. Just watching. I wanted to protest, but my voice caught in my throat. I realized then the terrible truth. This figure, this uncle, wasn't alive. He had died decades ago, and somehow he remained here. Waiting, looking, trying to replace someone alive to stay in the house. After that night, I never babysat again. But I still see him in my dreams. A pale face at a window, the twins smiling up at him, and the whisper of a voice that isn't quite theirs. Even now, I can't sit in a house without checking the windows, scanning the shadows. I can feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, just thinking about it. Every second feels stretched, like time itself conspires to remind me that some things are tethered to places, not people. Even after escaping, even with the safety of my own apartment and city lights behind me, a small, cold part of me can't stop replaying the face I saw through the Harper window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing it could happen again. People like that, spirits who refuse to leave, don't need a reason. They just need a tether. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. Story 9. Have you ever heard a baby cry in a house where no child lives? I didn't think I would, until the night I babysat at the old Whitmore residence. My name is Sarah, and I was 21 at the time. I'd been working as a babysitter for a couple of years, mostly for friends of friends, small jobs here and there. I was careful, responsible, and not prone to fear. Or at least, I didn't used to be. The Whitmore house was tucked at the end of a quiet suburban cul-de-sac. Large old brick, with ivy crawling up the walls. The kind of house that looks charming in daylight, but slightly ominous when the sun sets. Mrs. Whitmore met me at the door, smiling warmly. She explained that she and her husband would be attending a charity gala, and I was to stay until midnight. Their daughter, Elise, was asleep in the nursery. That's when she handed me the monitor. It wasn't a modern one with screens and alerts. It was old, almost antique. Cream-colored, bulky, with a little red light that blinked when it picked up sound. The receiver felt heavier than it looked, and the cord twisted unnaturally. Just keep it by the couch, Mrs. Whitmore said. If she cries, you'll hear her. I nodded. It was an ordinary request, ordinary house, ordinary night. Or so I thought. Around 10 minutes after they left, I was tidying the living room when I heard it. A soft, high-pitched wailing through the monitor. "Must be Elise," I muttered to myself. I grabbed a bottle of water and headed upstairs, expecting to see a squirming toddler. But the nursery was empty. No child. The crib sat there, untouched, the covers neatly folded. I shook my head, chuckling nervously. Maybe it's interference, I thought. Old electronics pick up stray signals. I went back downstairs, but the monitor's wail had stopped. Silence filled the room. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself I was imagining things. Then the lullaby started. It was soft, melodic, and in a language I didn't recognize. Gentle words, repeated over and over, soothing yet haunting at the same time. I froze. My pulse quickened. I leaned closer to the monitor, my hand trembling. The lullaby faded, replaced by small coos and gurgles. Sounds of a baby crying, wailing, and then laughing, though no baby was there. I told myself it was a prank, maybe left by the previous babysitter. I searched the nursery, the whole house, and even checked the backyard. Nothing. No baby. No hidden children. Only the old crib, the rocking chair, and the shadows dancing across the walls. Hours passed. Every 15 minutes, I'd check the monitor. The cries grew more insistent, the lullabies more insidious. They seemed to echo around the house, not just through the monitor. I could swear I heard footsteps in the hallway, soft, cautious, almost like someone pacing just beyond the nursery door. I tried calling the Whitmores. No answer. Their cell phones went straight to voicemail. My friends? Busy. I was alone, with the monitor's red light blinking, and that lullaby repeating itself in my head. At some point, exhaustion took over. I curled on the couch, the monitor beside me, trying to ignore it, but I couldn't. I kept imagining a small pair of eyes peering out from the crib, a tiny hand reaching for me. I remember saying aloud, "It's just a doll. Just a doll." Because that's what it was eventually. I had spotted it earlier, sitting in the crib, perfectly still. A porcelain baby doll, dressed in a faded pink gown, hair in soft curls, eyes painted wide open. I hadn't paid much attention until now. The monitor's wailing matched the doll's silent gaze. And then I noticed, its mouth seemed slightly open, the lips moving as if mimicking the sounds I heard. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze. Every nerve screamed that I was not imagining this. I grabbed the monitor and ran to the living room, turning it off. Silence. I stared at the doll through the nursery doorway. Its eyes gleamed in the dim light. That's when I saw the faint movement, a tiny tilt of the head, almost imperceptible. I tried rationalizing. Dolls shift sometimes, settle into cushions, that's normal. But the monitor had picked up cries before I even saw the movement. That meant something else was happening. Something that had been recorded, repeated, relived. I left the room, paced, tried to distract myself with a book. But then the monitor's red light blinked again. The lullaby returned, this time with a clarity that made my skin crawl. Words that weren't English, weren't anything I'd ever heard, repeated over and over. Coos, cries, sighs, the sounds of multiple infants. I ran to the monitor, turning it off. The room went silent. My pulse slowed, but my mind raced. What was this? How could a doll produce these sounds? Then I remembered the security cameras the Whitmores had in the hallway and living room. I cautiously checked the footage. Nothing. No baby. No one moving toward the crib. Only the doll, perfectly still. Yet, every time the monitor screamed, the red light blinked faster. I realized I was listening to something impossible. And then the truth hit me. This wasn't a malfunction. This wasn't interference. The cries weren't coming from a baby. They were coming from the doll itself. I wanted to leave, but my feet felt rooted. I had a creeping sense that someone, or something, was present, watching my every move. Hours passed like this. The doll's eyes seemed to follow me no matter where I stood. Every sound through the monitor, every faint coo, every whisper in that foreign lullaby made my stomach twist. I called the Whitmores again. Finally, Mr. Whitmore picked up. "Sir," I said, my voice shaking. Something's wrong with the monitor. The doll. He interrupted calm. The doll? Sarah, it's just a toy. Everything is fine. Elise is asleep, and the monitor works perfectly. But the monitor, the cries, the voices. There was a long silence. Then he sighed. Listen, Sarah. That doll, it belonged to my wife's grandmother. It's special. It always cries if you're alone in the house too long. It's harmless. Just don't touch it. I felt my knees go weak. Cries? Special? Sir, I can't. You'll be fine, he said quickly. We'll explain more tomorrow. Just stay calm. I hung up, but the monitor's red light was blinking again. My hands trembled as I reached toward the doll. Its porcelain face stared blankly at me, yet I could feel the energy emanating from it. Grief, desperation, something protective. And that's when I understood. This doll was not just a toy. It held the essence of the house's original owner, a woman who had died protecting her children. Somehow, that energy remained, trapped within the porcelain figure. The cries weren't meant to scare me. They were warnings, laments, echoes of someone who had lost her children and wanted to ensure no harm came to anyone else in that nursery. I backed away slowly, trying to keep my gaze off the doll. My pulse raced, my hands shaking. Every time I tried to leave the room, the monitor would emit a low whine, almost like a plea. I realized that if I left, I might be in danger, not from the doll itself, but from whatever the house had seen before. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, I gathered the courage to pick up the monitor and move it to the kitchen, out of range of the nursery. Silence enveloped me, but the atmosphere in the house felt heavy, watchful. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the living room, lights on, listening intently to the quiet hum of the heating system. Occasionally, I thought I heard faint coos from the nursery, but when I checked, the crib was empty. Just the doll. When the Whitmores returned the next morning, they were apologetic, yet strangely calm. Mrs. Whitmore reassured me that the doll had been in the family for generations, and that it was meant to protect, not harm. She said it might continue to make noises for the new babysitter until it felt comfortable with them. I left that house trembling, vowing never to babysit there again. But even now, years later, I can't hear a baby cry without my stomach nodding. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I swear I can hear that lullaby faintly in a language I don't understand. And I remember the doll, sitting in its crib, watching, waiting, as if to remind me that even inanimate things can carry the weight of someone's grief. I learned that night that danger doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it's the echoes of those who came before, watching, warning, and never quite leaving. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. Because sometimes, even a doll can cry alone, even when there's no baby in the room. Story 10. You ever get that feeling that everyone around you knows more than they should? That's what happened to me the night I realized just how wrong a quiet neighborhood could be. My name's Hannah. I was 20, living in a sleepy suburb just outside Detroit. Babysitting was my weekend gig, mostly uneventful. I liked it. It was quiet, predictable, and paid more than my minimum wage cafe shifts. That Friday night, I had a new family, the Bakers. 2 kids, ages 7 and 9. Parents were out for a charity event. Simple enough. The street looked normal, tree-lined, tidy lawns, mailboxes evenly spaced. I parked, grabbed my bag, and waved at the neighbors as I walked up to the house. That's when I first noticed it. A kid on the porch across the street, staring. Not with curiosity, not with hesitation, just staring. "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. The kid waved, smiling, and said, "Hannah." I froze. "Huh?" I asked, cautious. "You're Hannah," the kid repeated. "The doors don't open tonight. Watch out for the doors." I laughed nervously, thinking it was some joke. "I don't think I know you." The kid just smiled, nodded once, and ran inside. Shaking it off, I got to the Baker house. Inside, the kids greeted me warmly. Lila, the older one, had that smug, "I know better than you" smile kids get when they feel in charge. Max was bouncing a basketball against the wall, oblivious. I went through the usual snacks, chores, routines. But that warning echoed in my mind. The doors don't open tonight. By 9 o'clock, the kids were in bed. I settled on the couch with my phone, trying to distract myself. That's when I noticed it, shadows in the windows across the street. Kids, lots of them, not playing, not running, just standing and staring at me. I felt my stomach twist. Every instinct screamed leave. But I stayed. I had to. Babysitting meant responsibility, right? An hour passed. I checked on the kids, flicked the lights in the hallway. That's when I heard soft whispering from outside. Names. My name. Hannah. Hannah. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. The whispers weren't coming from any one window. They were all around me. Every house on the block, silhouettes pressed against the glass. And the faces, children. Some I hadn't seen before. And yet, they all knew me. I told myself it was nerves, overactive imagination. But the pattern continued. Every child I passed on the street, while walking to the corner store for more snacks, while taking out the trash during my break, would call my name. Every single one. Not in greeting. More like acknowledgement. Like they'd been expecting me. The next wave of unease hit around 11:30. I was walking Lila's stuffed bunny back to her room when I saw one of the kids' bedroom doors slowly creak open. No one was supposed to be awake. I froze. The door opened wider, then slammed shut. I rushed in, nobody there. Max was asleep. Lila was tucked in tight. I sat in the hallway, shaking, trying to calm myself. That's when the whispering started again. Names, warnings, a chorus of them. Hannah, the doors don't open. I ran to the front door. My keys. My bag. Anything. I flung it open, and the street was empty. Not a single kid, not a single figure. Silence. Just the warm summer air brushing against my skin. I thought I was imagining it. Maybe exhaustion, maybe stress. But then I heard it. Soft tapping on the windows. A rhythm. Slowly, methodically. I turned. Every window on the block had a kid pressing a hand, or a face, against the glass. Watching me. Smiling. I ran back inside, locking the door, trying to call 911. Phone dead. No signal. Every line dead. My heart sank into my stomach. I realized I wasn't just being watched. I was being expected. The whispers grew louder. Names, laughter, instructions. Do not open the doors. And then I understood. The doors. All the doors in the house. Every one of them led somewhere I shouldn't go. I tried the hallway closet. Locked. The pantry. Locked. Even the basement door locked. My pulse thundered. A knock at the door. 3 light taps. Soft. Polite. Almost playful. I don't know who you are, I called out, voice trembling. No answer. Just another tap. Then the whisper, Hannah, come play. I bolted for the back door, hoping to escape to the alley, to the street, but it wouldn't budge. My hands shaking, I realized. Every exit, every door, every way out blocked. Panic set in. I ran from room to room, hearing faint footsteps behind me, echoing mine. I tried yelling for the kids, they were asleep. I tried screaming for the parents, they were gone. I was alone with them. The whispers became a chant, soft but growing. Hannah, Hannah. Then I saw movement. At first, subtle. The shadows of the kids shifting inside the house. At the top of the stairs, silhouettes of children appeared, though I'd left them asleep. They weren't moving like kids. Not normal. Their heads tilted, watching. Waiting. I tried the phone again. Dead. Tried the door. Dead. Tried the windows. Sturdy locks. I remembered the warning. The doors don't open tonight. I'd ignored it. I thought it was nonsense. And now I understood too late. The shadows crept closer, silently, fluidly. Their faces now visible in the dim hallway light. Small, pale, eyes too knowing, too calculating. Every child I'd ever seen in the neighborhood, even those I hadn't recognized, were there. And they all knew me. I ran for the stairs, hoping to reach the roof. Anything. But the top step creaked too loudly. A voice from behind. Hannah. I spun. No one there. But the air felt thick, charged, like 100 small eyes were drilling into me. I stumbled into the attic, dusty, dimly lit, cobwebs brushing against my face. I slammed the door behind me, pressing my back against it. Then the whispering turned to laughter, a chorus of tiny voices echoing off the walls. "You're ours now, Hannah." I pounded on the door, screaming. "No, get out. Leave me alone." Footsteps climbed the attic stairs, slow, deliberate. I backed up against the far wall. The old trapdoor to the roof, rusted, heavy. I yanked it open. Below, the street was clear. Empty. Too quiet. I climbed onto the roof, heart hammering. From the corner of my eye, movement. Shadows pooling, stretching upward, converging on the house. Faces, small, countless, smiling, all turning toward me. I jumped, fell onto the neighbor's yard, scraped and bruised, but moving. Running. Behind me, the laughter followed, faint but persistent. Whispering names. "Hannah, Hannah." I didn't stop until I reached the main road. A car passed, and I flagged it down. The driver, a kind man, took me to the police station. I told my story, breathless, hysterical. They checked the neighborhood the next day. Nothing. No children outside, no signs of intrusion, no one awake at all. The house was normal, clean. The doors were ordinary. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what they whispered. Months later, I passed that street while driving home. The houses looked quiet, welcoming, normal. Kids playing in the yards, parents watering flowers. But when I caught the reflection of the window in my rearview mirror, a small face peeked out, watching, smiling, and it knew my name. I never babysat again. Not in that town, not anywhere near it. Even now, when I see a child on a quiet street staring, I feel it in my chest, a pull, a warning. Because that neighborhood wasn't a neighborhood. It was a trap, and the children, they weren't innocent. They were the hunters, waiting, choosing the next babysitter. Sometimes late at night, I swear I can hear tiny voices whispering my name. And I remember the warning I should never have ignored. The doors don't open tonight. And I know now that it wasn't just a game. It's a ritual. And I almost became part of it. Even after escaping, even with the safety of daylight, even with the police behind me, a small, cold part of me can't stop replaying the faces I saw through the windows. The children who didn't blink, who smiled too knowingly, who knew my name before I ever stepped on their street. If your gut ever tells you a neighborhood is wrong, if the kids smile too knowingly, if a quiet street seems too alive, listen. Because sometimes, the scariest part isn't what's behind the doors. It's knowing that someone, something, is waiting for you on the other side.